It's safe to say that with Breath of the Wild 2 in the pipeline, most weren't expecting another game set canonically in the same world, and as a Warriors title no less. And yet, this unlikely match seems like a great idea to convey the true scale of the war against Calamity Ganon. And now that we've spent nearly 2 weeks with the game, it's time to take an in-depth look at how it all comes together. Does this game truly do justice for the world of Breath of the Wild? And is Age of Calamity a fulfilling entry in the Hyrule Warriors series? Let's find out. Unlike what the title Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity might suggest, this isn't just a sequel to Hyrule Warriors with the Breath of the Wild skin. Instead, it combines elements of both games to create something uniquely great. In fact, this game nearly feels more like Breath of the Wild at times, by retaining many of its notable mechanics, just combined with the controls and general chaos of a Warriors title. And, without the whole open world thing. Set 100 years before the events of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Age of Calamity has players taking control of Link, Zelda, Impa, and the 4 champions to combat the looming threat of Calamity Ganon's imminent return, taking out hundreds of monsters single-handedly. The 1-on-100 style of gameplay only advances further when you get to pilot a Divine Beast, now feeling a lot closer to 1-on-1000. All of Hyrule is at stake, and the game makes sure to convey that strongly through its story. In Breath of the Wild, the threat of Calamity Ganon's return was treated more like an inconvenience, with many NPCs not seeming terribly concerned. When the Calamity struck 100 years prior, most of the pressure seemed to fall specifically to Zelda herself. While Zelda is still the central focus in Age of Calamity, the key to success does not fall solely on her shoulders. As seen in the opening moments of the game, Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity tells the tragic tale of the fall of Hyrule to Calamity Ganon, with the only hope coming in the form of a little guardian keen on granting Zelda's wish to protect everyone by traveling back in time. Yep, yet another Zelda game involving the wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff. But once you get past the feeling of, oh, a time travel plot in a Zelda game, it's actually a really great opening that not only reminds fans what happened 100 years before the events of Breath of the Wild, but also completely sets the tone for the rest of this game. Death and destruction are coming, soon, and if Hyrule wants to survive, it needs to be ready. The main plot to Age of Calamity is told through cutscenes that bookend each of the story missions, but a good amount of information is also conveyed through narration from King Rome. While part of me wishes that every event could be viewed through a nice cutscene, these narrations are a nice good buffer between them. Additionally, some text-based dialogue interactions do play out during story missions, but those generally aren't too loaded with plot details. After Hyrule Warriors, you might be expecting more fan service than actual story, but thankfully, that couldn't be further from the truth this time. Not once during the game did I expect a portal to open up to let Agatha from Twilight Princess, somehow, come along factoring into the plot of the game. Nor did I ever think, this is a better crossover than the Avengers. Every moment I spent with the story of Age of Calamity, I felt interested and invested in what was going on to increase Hyrule's efforts to stop Calamity Ganon, and the struggles that Zelda faced. I genuinely enjoyed the story of Age of Calamity, and I think it really feels like the plot of a Zelda game. Sure, it's cheesy at times, and the presence of time travel makes one raise an eyebrow at what exactly that could mean for the greater story as a whole, but isn't that the case for a lot of core Zelda games? While the hack-and-slash 1-on-100 warrior-style gameplay is certainly not the Zelda series' norm, I think it absolutely complements the war story told here. Fighting at most 5 bokoblins and perhaps a moblin or a guardian can feel threatening in Breath of the Wild, but it doesn't exactly convey the idea of a large-scale war against a looming evil. The warrior-style gameplay is a great fit to demonstrate the dangers and destruction that once threatened all of Hyrule. While Breath of the Wild is based around an open-world environment, embracing exploration, Age of Calamity manages to accurately capture the world of Hyrule by breaking it into discrete areas you'll explore on a per-mission basis. Many locations match up almost perfectly with those in Breath of the Wild, before they were destroyed by the Calamity at least. It's great to see entire villages still standing. These detailed battlefields are riddled with secrets to find as rewards for exploration, such as Koroks and treasure chests. The large maps can take some time to fully explore, so having multiple characters to swap between during battle is really helpful, as they can target different areas of the battlefield. Speaking of which, the game also supports split-screen co-op with a friend too, which can help divide up the work in exploration, especially on busier missions. Despite being a completely different genre of game than Breath of the Wild, Age of Calamity manages to capture its essence with its maps and levels pretty well. To simply say Age of Calamity is a warrior-style game really undervalues all of the unique mechanics and smaller complexities that are present. While the original Hyrule Warriors definitely had some cute and fun Zelda nods, such as the items, it was mostly superficial, and it really was just a Dynasty Warriors game with a coat of Zelda paint. Age of Calamity isn't just a natural advancement of these systems, it does so while blending it with the gameplay of Breath of the Wild. Though similar in use to the items from the first Hyrule Warriors, the use of Sheikah runes make for a great strategic element, especially when different enemy attacks have different weaknesses, and every character uses the runes differently. Rather than simply being items that every character uses identically, it adds a lot of variety to the character movesets. Beyond the Sheikah runes, shield parrying and the Flurry Rush mechanic are also present from Breath of the Wild, though the latter definitely feels harder to pull off here, with a much smaller window to dodge. I learned pretty quickly that Lynels are my true enemy, but it was so utterly satisfying to eventually land Flurry Rush after Flurry Rush against them. Thankfully, you can practice these skills, such as Flurry Rushes, in the meditative training area, with absolutely no penalty for taking damage in these mock battles. Every character is equipped with a moveset, filled with weak attacks, strong attacks, unique actions, and special attacks. If you add in the fact that Sheikah runes execute differently for each character, it all makes for some very diverse movesets. While the original Hyrule Warriors had some characters in its roster that I didn't enjoy, I'm looking at you, Ruto and Agatha, I was really surprised to find that I enjoy every character in this game. They're all filled with gameplay diversity and interesting mechanics that set them all distinctly apart from each other. I'm a big fan of the unique actions that each character can unleash with the ZR button. While Link fires a flurry of arrows, Revali takes to the air, completely changing how he plays with different combos, and Zelda activates any runes that she's placed on the battlefield. While it goes without saying that plenty of characters have mechanics that set them apart from others, and this was true of the original Hyrule Warriors as well, I really love the added diversity and depth each character has through their unique actions. Impa and Mipha might be my favorites. While every character in the game is genuinely really fun, the speed of them both make them incredibly satisfying to level battlefields with. Impa, for instance, gets some really flashy combo strings a bit later into the game that are great for taking out crowds of enemies, especially if you have all of her clones. There's something really satisfying about running up to a cluster of enemies, immediately obtaining all three symbols, and tearing through them all with a wall of Impas. Weak point gauges are a pretty important mechanic when it comes to the gameplay in Age of Calamity. These appear whenever an enemy is, well, weakened. This can be by your own hands, such as countering an attack with a Sheikah rune or using an elemental rod, or naturally when an enemy is tired after using a strong attack. Making an enemy's weak point gauge appear takes some strategy, especially for bosses, so it isn't as simple as hacking and slashing all the time. While weak point gauges were present in the original Hyrule Warriors, they feel a lot more important this time around, with so many ways to trigger them. It isn't as easy to chip away at them as it was before, so you'll need to put in the work to take out larger foes by smashing their weak points. You can take out larger foes by the weak point gauge, but what happens when you're the large foe? When taking control of a Divine Beast, you tower over entire battlefields, with most enemies getting taken out by a single stomp or blast. Despite this, you aren't invincible. It's easy to get overwhelmed by explosions or guardian lasers fired at your Divine Beast if you aren't paying attention to block the damage. While it's satisfying to level the whole area and annihilate every enemy on screen, even these colossal machines have their limits. While I enjoy the story missions involving the Divine Beasts, the extra challenges felt like a chore to go through. The beasts are rather slow, and they each only have about 3 moves, so it can start to feel a little tedious. Most of these levels aren't actual on-rail shooters, though early levels may feel that way with how thin the map is. Players have full control to move the Divine Beast, spam a comparatively weak shot, perform a stronger AoE attack, do a physical attack, and a large blast special attack. Nearly all attacks can be aimed using motion controls as well. There aren't too many Divine Beast levels in the game, so they really are much more of a bonus segment. At the least, they do a fantastic job conveying the chaos and destruction during the war against Calamity Ganon. Age of Calamity doesn't play like a Breath of the Wild skinned Warriors title, as it builds off of those hack and slash systems and mechanics in ways that make it feel like a fast-paced, action-filled version of Breath of the Wild. And the best part is that it's truly satisfying every step of the way. Maybe it's because I enjoy this kind of gameplay, but I never felt bored or that the gameplay was getting repetitive, unlike the original Hyrule Warriors at times. The systems and mechanics here offer enough diversity and strategizing that I was constantly engaged, and I hardly ever wanted to put the game down these last couple of weeks. In fact, it's pretty hard to put the game down when there's just so much to do. In Age of Calamity, there's no side modes, because everything exists as part of the main world map. The story missions, the side missions and challenge missions, even all the services and quests. While I can't provide any exact numbers, the amount of playable content in Age of Calamity is pretty close to the amount in the original release of Hyrule Warriors, excluding all the essentially years of DLC that game got. The services and quests are fairly similar to systems in the original game as well, though they're a bit different. Services, materials, and rupees feel a lot more integral when not locked behind a bazaar button to put them all in one big nested menu. Visiting the Hylian Blacksmith Guild to improve your weapons, or military training camp to level up warriors feels more impactful, as if it's actually part of the world of Hyrule, rather than part of a random menu. Visiting shops to purchase materials rather than needing to grind levels repeatedly for everything helps make the world feel populated, as do all the side quests. Rather than obtaining new hearts and combos for characters through a big skill tree, these unlock as rewards for completing side quests on the world map, tied to specific characters. Instead of filling the next slot in my skill tree, I much prefer hearing about how Link helps a boy from the village train against a fake monster. While they still function the same by spending specific materials to unlock the advancement, having in-game flavor text for each ounce of progress per character adds a lot more character and charm to the world than the plain skill tree of the previous game. The characters found throughout Hyrule all feel fairly detailed, and that's exciting. Characters needing certain materials so they can live out their dream of opening up a shop, or playable warriors needing to present certain materials so they can not just better their own skills, but their respective regions, add a lot of depth to this world. When we hear about Rivali helping train Rito at the flight range, or Urbosa clearing the Gerudo Desert of dangers to protect her people, or Mipha rushing to find and heal wounded Zora soldiers, it makes players care more about these characters, and helps get a better idea for who they are and the state of the world. While many players know who the characters of Breath of the Wild are, chances are you never knew them this well. This extends into battles as well. Characters offering high praise based on the player's efforts aren't new to Warriors titles, but they're filled with accurate character personalities in Age of Calamity. Take Rivali, for example, a jerk who considers high praise to be, "You performed satisfactory." Despite this, he'll actively call Urbosa reliable if both are on the battlefield, and he seems to value her skills as a warrior. It's great to see these characters interact too, as in Breath of the Wild, the champions hardly talked with each other, usually only to Link or Zelda, outside of a couple specific instances. These character interactions are pushed even further in cutscenes. While we can't talk about any specific details on cutscenes after Chapter 1, I can say that as a whole, these appear much higher quality than the cutscenes from Breath of the Wild. Not only are there plenty more, but the general voice acting and direction seems a lot stronger. Charming dialogue between characters, such as Zelda and Impa or Zelda and Urbosa, are also present in ways that help push these relationships beyond something only Link may have witnessed in his memories from Breath of the Wild. I constantly found myself smiling at early points in the game, as the personalities of these characters shine through. Something else that made me smile is the soundtrack to the game. I can't stop listening to it. While the original Hyrule Warriors took more of a hard-edged rock approach to its Zelda remixes, Age of Calamity builds off of what Breath of the Wild offered, but makes it more exciting. The vast majority of these remixes are incredible. I was especially wowed by each champion's melody being turned into a full battle theme. Even when working on this review, I spent most of my time listening to the Battle of Hyrule Field on loop. True to Breath of the Wild, one large time sink, however, has been searching for the dreaded Koroks. Every single story mission has Koroks hidden within, with some being much more well hidden than others. It really takes searching every nook and cranny of a level to find them all. The amount per level varies, and players won't unlock a way to view the total number of Koroks per mission until near the end of the story. Thankfully, I can safely say this process felt far less grueling than it did in Breath of the Wild, as there are significantly fewer Koroks to find, and the per level breakdown makes tracking them much more manageable. While it can still be a headache to find them all, I strongly recommend waiting until after obtaining the ability to see how many are in each level. Korok seeds are used to expand weapon inventory slots, and with how many weapons characters can earn from a single level, Trust me when I say that this is helpful. While hunting down Koroks was frustrating in Breath of the Wild, I actually found it more fun in Age of Calamity. Speaking of headaches and frustration, I want to take a minute to talk about the FPS and performance of the game, which didn't seem too promising going by the demo. And now, after playing the full game, I can confidently say that while it still doesn't make for a good first impression outside of that first level, the game rarely experiences notable slowdowns quite that severe. While it certainly still rears its ugly head at times, such as during some special attacks depending on how many enemies are on screen, or if there's too many visual effects during a Divine Beast level, I didn't find it to be a major problem. For single player at least. But when it comes to co-op, the game runs honestly rather poorly. The image quality seems to be lowered for multiplayer, as all of the models and visuals appear lower quality, and the frame rate has a tendency to drop significantly at times, especially when one player uses a special move while the other is simply fighting. I was shocked to see the game dip down to what must have been around 5 FPS for a solid few seconds, though under severe circumstances, which wasn't really too hard to make happen. Despite this, I found the multiplayer to be enjoyable, and appreciated the extra player when I found myself cornered solo against multiple Lionel at once. It definitely helped divide and conquer large maps. While I'm disappointed in seeing the performance take such a hit in multiplayer, I can't say it's much of a problem if you're like me and prefer to play solo anyway. Something else I find a bit disappointing is the amiibo functionality. Up to 5 amiibo can be scanned in a single day, with most giving random materials. Any amiibo of a playable character has a chance to give a weapon for that character, though it could also give materials related to their region. Unfortunately, that's all they do. Basically, there's no special exclusive unlocks from amiibo, and I feel it's a bit of a missed opportunity, quite frankly. Since Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity was revealed 2 months ago, it quickly became my most anticipated game of the year. To have a game set during the height of the Great Calamity in the same world as Breath of the Wild was really enticing. Plus, it was a new Hyrule Warriors title, a game I spent well over 500 hours in across all 3 releases, and needless to say, I was incredibly excited for this title. Between a story that genuinely feels like it takes place in the Zelda universe, characters filled with charm that get better development than their last appearance, and gameplay that constantly kept me hooked without ever dropping my attention, I can confidently say that I loved Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. None of my 100+ hours poured into this game have felt wasted, and I've hardly been able to put it down this entire time. Despite some shortcomings in performance and additional features, this is absolutely a title worth sinking your teeth into if you're a fan of Breath of the Wild or Hyrule Warriors. While it may take some time to adjust to the gameplay if you're only familiar with one and not both of these titles, I strongly believe that at the end of the day, quite a few fans may even name this their favorite title in the Zelda series. Whether it's for the plot, gameplay, or world building, there's a lot to love here, as long as you can look past some technical shortcomings. I only hope this game gets some post-launch DLC, to further increase the time that I get to spend with it. With that, thank you all for watching our review on Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. Make sure to subscribe to Game Explained for plenty more on Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, and other things gaming as well. Until next time, farewell.